Mono Island, Treasury Islands. October 1943. Machinist Mate 2nd Class Aurelio Tassone of the 87th Naval Construction Battalion drove a 24-ton Caterpillar D8, a bulldozer, not a tank, straight at a Japanese pillbox. He raised the blade as a shield, dropped it on the bunker, and bladed earth over 12 defenders. Silver Star. He was a construction worker. The machine he was driving was designed to grade roads. By the time the war reached Iwo Jima, armored bulldozers were landing in the assault waves alongside the Marines, and Seabee veterans would later say the Japanese had learned a hard lesson. Do not shoot the man on the bulldozer. No formal order has ever been found, but the reason the legend exists was buried in the coral across half the Pacific. From Tarawa to Iwo Jima, Japanese defensive doctrine turned every island into a fortress. Coconut log pillboxes with interlocking fields of fire, reinforced concrete bunkers sunk into coral. And from Peleliu forward, interconnected cave and tunnel systems that could absorb days of naval bombardment and emerge fighting. On Iwo Jima alone, more than 800 pillboxes guarded the airfields. More than 11 miles of tunnels had been completed by the time the Marines hit the beach. Each position had to be killed individually, flamethrower teams burning their way in, satchel charges thrown through firing slits, tanks grinding forward to put a round through the embrasure at point-blank range. Every reduction cost men, and the Marines needed something else on those beaches: heavy equipment to move earth, clear wreckage, and push roads inland. That meant bulldozer operators sitting in the open on top of 24-ton machines, completely exposed to everything the Japanese had. Cape Gloucester, New Britain, 3 January 1944. The 19th Naval Construction Battalion, redesignated as the 3rd Battalion, 17th Marines, was supporting the 1st Marine Division at a creek crossing the men had already named Suicide Creek. 3 successive bulldozer operators tried to grade a tank crossing under direct Japanese fire. 2 were shot out of the seat. A Marine, whose name does not survive in the record, walked alongside the dozer using its steel bulk as cover and worked the blade controls from outside with a shovel and an axe handle. Because every man who had sat in that seat was dead or bleeding. The machines were nearly indestructible. The men driving them were not. Somewhere in a Pacific Battalion welding shop with nobody's name on the patent, someone decided to fix that. The Seabees were born from a legal problem as much as a tactical one. Civilian construction crews building bases at Wake, Guam, and the Philippines in 1940 and 41 could be and were executed as guerrillas if they picked up a weapon. Rear Admiral Ben Morrell, Chief of the Bureau of Yards and Docks, requested authority to militarize Navy construction on 28th of December 1941. By March of 42, the Naval Construction Battalions had a name, an insignia, and a motto: Construimus Batuimus. We build, we fight. The men who filled those battalions averaged 37 years old. Welders, ironworkers, heavy equipment operators, electricians, trained at Camp Endicott, Rhode Island, in both bulldozer operation and Browning automatic rifle gunnery. Tradesmen who could shoot. Their signature machine was the Caterpillar D8, 132 to 148 horsepower, 24 tons of steel and diesel. Nearly twice the power of the Marine Corps' own TD-18 tractors, which is why Marine commanders kept requesting Seabee D8s for every amphibious operation in the Pacific. The armor was not a factory product. It was flat steel plate welded over the operator station in battalion machine shops, vision slits cut for the driver's eyes, each battalion producing a slightly different solution, no central specification, no engineering drawing. The blade itself became the forward shield. Raised high on approach, it covered the operator's chest and head. Dropped onto a bunker, it crushed the structure. Then, the operator bladed earth over what was left. A flamethrower team could reduce one pillbox, but it expended its fuel in seconds and left its operator exposed at close range. A bulldozer sealed the position and kept working. It was the difference between a single-use weapon and a reusable one. By 1945, the Navy would send an entire Seabee regiment, the 41st, into the second wave at Iwo Jima. Construction workers landing alongside the Marines on the most fortified island in the Pacific. What the 133rd Battalion faced on those black volcanic beaches would cost them 245 men. That story is coming. But first, the bulldozer had to prove it could fight. On Mono Island in the Treasuries, October 1943, it did. Machinist's mate Second Class Aurelio Tassone of the 87th Naval Construction Battalion was driving his D-8, a machine he had named Helen, ashore when Lieutenant Charles E. Turnbull told him a Japanese log and coral pillbox was holding up the advance. Tassone raised the blade as a shield and drove straight at the firing slit. Turnbull walked behind, firing his carbine for cover. Rifle rounds hit the raised blade and rang off the steel. Tassone swung behind the bunker, dropped the blade onto the roof, and crushed it. Then, as methodically as if he were smoothing a rough patch of road, he bladed earth over the wreckage. After the fight, the position was opened. 12 Japanese defenders and a large caliber gun were pulled from the dirt. Both men received the Silver Star. The tactic was proven. It scaled. Peleliu, Palau Islands, 15 September through late November 1944. The 33rd and 73rd Naval Construction Battalions landed with the 1st Marine Division into one of the war's worst killing grounds. When the Marines and the Army's 81st Wildcat Division turned to the Umabrogel Pocket, a honeycomb of interconnected caves bored through coral ridgeline, clearing room by room would have cost hundreds more dead. The method became siege. Smoke pots and napalm pumped into cave mouths first, then armored bulldozers grinding forward to seal the entrances under tons of crushed coral. The diesel engines echoed off the coral walls. The grinding of treads over rock was the last sound defenders heard before the cave mouth disappeared. The 81st Division's after-action records used language that would never appear in a press release. They had decided to bury the Japanese. 1,300 enemy killed, 143 captured. Most of the dead were never recovered. On Betio, Tarawa Atoll, it had already happened in miniature. After 76 hours of fighting that killed 4,500 Japanese defenders and 1,000 Korean laborers, the 74th and 98th Naval Construction Battalions drove their D-7s across a surface so cratered it looked lunar. Shattered concrete, splintered coconut logs, and human remains. Filling craters, crushing surviving bunkers, and burying remaining resistance positions under tons of sand and rock to restore Hawkins Field. The airstrip was operational within weeks. Then came Iwo Jima. 19 February 1945. The 133rd Naval Construction Battalion landed in the second wave on blue and yellow beaches with the 4th Marine Division. The 31st NCB came ashore with the 5th Division. The 62nd followed on D+5 with the 3rd.
The 133rd was the only non-Marine unit in Marine Corps history ordered into USMC fatigues and landed at full battalion strength as a pioneer battalion. Petty Officer 2nd Class Marvin Nottingham and Petty Officer Clint Trefethen, both bulldozer drivers, 133rd NCB, later described the armored D-8 riding in the bow of their LSM and the ramp dropping into mortar fire already zeroed on the beach. The black volcanic sand swallowed boots to the ankle and bogged treads to a halt. Even the D-8s could not gain traction until Marston matting was laid beneath their tracks. Mortar rounds detonated on the open beach. Foxholes were impossible. The volcanic ash collapsed as fast as men could dig. Shrapnel rang off the armored cabs like hammer strikes on a church bell. The men inside kept cutting. Within 7 days, the 3 battalions had Motoyama Airfield No. 1 operational. The 133rd alone moved more than 1 million cubic yards of earth and crushed over 100,000 tons of rock for runway base. Jack Cornwell of the 31st NCB, who later wrote the most detailed first-person account of dozer work on that island they also served, who drove cranes and cats, described an unnamed power shovel operator who swung his bucket around and packed the mouth of 2 caves shut when sniper rounds started bouncing off his cab. No hesitation, no order. Just a tradesman solving a problem with the tool in his hand. The cost of all that building? 245 casualties, 42 killed, 203 wounded, over 30% of the battalion. Construction workers, the highest single-unit Seabee losses of the entire war. There is a story the old Seabees tell, that Japanese defenders learned never to shoot the guy on the bulldozer. No captured order has ever been found. It does not appear in the U.S. Marine Corps monographs, the Strategic Bombing Survey interrogations, or General Kuribayashi's documented battle instructions for Iwo Jima. But the tactical logic underneath the legend needs no document to prove it. Shooting at an armored bulldozer with a rifle accomplished nothing except revealing your position. And if the dozer kept coming, the last thing you saw was the blade. On Peleliu, archaeologists surveying nearly 200 wartime caves in 2019 found what the bulldozers left behind: charred bones, sake bottles, Imperial Japanese Navy buttons, sealed inside coral tombs that had not been opened in 75 years. The armor had limits. It stopped rifle and light machine gun fire, but a direct hit from a 47mm anti-tank gun, a satchel charge lobbed over the blade, or a mortar round dropped into an open-topped cab would kill the operator as dead as if he had been sitting in the open. Vision through the narrow slits was poor. Every operator depended on a spotter walking alongside, exposed like Turnbull at Mono Island, armed with nothing but a carbine and nerve. One Seabee veteran's family recorded that he told the story only 2 weeks before he died. He was still carrying the weight of driving the machine that buried so many men alive. There were so many dead men, he said. The armored Caterpillar D7 cut jungle with Rome plows in Vietnam. It breached Iraqi berms in Desert Storm. Today, the Israeli D9R Doobie, 50 tons under 15 tons of factory armor, and the American D7R2 with a 360-degree crew protection kit are the lineal descendants of the welded plate a Seabee bolted onto a bulldozer in a Pacific shop 80 years ago. The same machine, the same tactic, the same trade. On Mono Island in 1943, Aurelio Tassone raised his blade and drove at the guns. The Seabees built the roads, the runways, and the bases that won the Pacific. And when something was in the way, they buried it. They were construction workers. They still are.